I recently had 2 professional sports interviews. They were great experiences. I learned a lot. Unfortunately, I did not get the roles. But I wanted to create this video to provide information and education about the interview process. So we're going to talk about how the interviews went, what I learned, and where do I go from here. All right, before we get started, my name is Ed Jones. I'm the founder of Beyond the Field. And Beyond the Field helps provide exposure to player development. Player development is defined as the enhancement of the athlete experience through holistic and intentional programming and initiatives. And if you want more information on player development, there's a link in the show notes where you can get a downloadable document that dives into player development for you. So as I talked to you about it, I had 2 professional sports interviews in this player development, player engagement space. And so it's been pretty cool to have those opportunities. Like literally they were like during the same time. So that was crazy as well. But I want to talk to you a little bit about, how they went, what I learned, and where do I go from there. So number one, we're going to talk about how they went. Now these 2 different positions were 2 different roles. So one was a role leading the player, and we'll call it player development for lack of a better word, because you can get into a lot of words or whatever it may be, leading that player development space. And that was pretty cool, with the possibility of hiring someone in 6 months. And the other role was a manager role, assistant role, helping someone who was already leading in that space. So that was pretty interesting. I've always been the director of the role, and I've always led it. I haven't hired, so that has been a pretty cool experience. The other experience, it would have been pretty cool to be a number 2, because I talked to the person who was a number 1, and I just love their language. They talked about collaboration, working together, building out something together. And so that made me really, really excited about the opportunity. And I've never seen the number 2 aspect from this. And a lot of people who I talk to want to get in the role, and most people that will get in the role will get in the role from a number 2 standpoint. So it would have been sweet for me to see that as somebody who has been a director, to go to a number 2 and be in that supportive role, pushing the enhancement of the athletes by. So literally during the same time, I'm like, hey, well, this position would be pretty cool because I can hire, there's different things here. And I'm like, well, this position is pretty cool because of the resources. And number 2, I can support. There's some things that I could learn, right? I love learning in that space. So it was a lot going through that process there. The second thing was the format. The format, one of them was a typical interview, put in your application, HR call, first round, panel, final round, decision. The other was, hey, it's between you and somebody else. Don't need an application, send me your resume. Here's the description of the role. Would you like it, right? If it's available. So the director one was one that was more fluid, more traditional. The supportive one, we'll call it assistant director role, was one that was more like, hey, I've heard great things about you and I want you on this staff. And so that format was pretty interesting, because you're like preparing on one end for like traditional interviews, and on the other end, you're just like, hey, I just can't mess this up, right? I just got to be me and all that. The one thing I really, really liked about the format, both formats, was one position was a little different in definition of what I've done before. The other one I had more comfortability in. But the one thing I was really proud of myself is some of you all know, I put out a post, and I'll put it up on the screen, about a couple weeks ago, saying it's been 4 years since I've been in the role, and I have missed being around athletes. I've missed developing people. I missed the relationships in the building, because my dream role is to develop everybody. And so I've always wanted to be there to, hey, here, even coaches or GAs, interns, of course, the athlete. I wanted to develop everybody. So I missed that that day-to-day interaction with incredible professionals and helping people get to their highest point of wherever they want to get. And so I've been missing that. And so it's funny, my wife actually, she knew a year and a half in. I was kind of like, you know what, I'm good. Like, this is different. It's been a transition. I've been enjoying creating content. I have a course. I've been enjoying doing cohorts, different things like that. But I do miss being around the players. And so this was a great opportunity. So I was excited for both opportunities, because both opportunities gave me that, afforded me opportunities to be around athletes. That director role one was one where you could create a ecosystem of engagement that they had never had. In a sense, that was pretty cool. The assistant director would be creating not necessarily ecosystem, but the structure and the systems and processes that they haven't had. And so both of those was cool. But number one, it's going to There's going to be an opportunity to be around athletes. And with that said, I was excited with the confidence I had in myself, going back to what I was saying earlier, because 4 years of hearing no's can take a toll on you. It really can. And as much as y'all see me on here smiling, I've had some dark days. Some of y'all know the gospel song. I've had some hills to climb. I've had my questions, Lord. But no, seriously, I'm like, God, what's going on? And so that leaving those 2 interviews, I've been in interviews where I just haven't been as confident, because you go 1 year without being enrolled, 2 years without being enrolled, 3 years without being in a role. And you're like, man, do I have it? Am I able to do it? Do people want me around? Do people see my value? And those are real things. Some of y'all might be listening to this thinking like, are you crazy? But this is what I was going through, right? And I'm just being honest and vulnerable with you all. And so the one thing I want to do from interviews from here on out is be confident. And I left with the director, the formal, interview process. I left everything on the field. I left it all out there. And I felt good when I left the interview. I said I did everything I could do. There's other interview as well. I was very straight to the point. Like, hey, I know you're calling. Am I have to go through an interview process? Because like, you all know what I can do. And this person like, nah, like, you're incredible. Like, we want you on our team. And so I left both interviews with the confidence in myself, knowing like, yeah, hey, it is what it is. This is who I am. This is what I've done. And I can only communicate it one way. Either you're going to want me or you don't. And I'm okay with that. My big deal is whenever I lose those positions, I hope they hire someone that is really, truly there to impact the athletes. That's my only hope with that. All right. So though that is me talking about how they went, me being a little vulnerable with you all. I want to talk about some things that I learned. Like I said earlier, I like learning. Everything is about learning, right? I think somebody said you don't take L's or losses, you take lessons. I don't fully agree with that, but I think that there are lessons in the losses. And so one thing I learned is through this, there's a lot of people in the decision-making process, right? So you have to get to know a lot of people. And so for you all that are thinking about this space, maybe you've seen Alexander Martin post something and you say, man, like, oh, I know so-and-so, they're going to get me in. Well, everybody reports to somebody, and all those people they report to think they know what the role is or have a person that they believe would do best in this. And so there's a lot of people in the decision-making process. And so what I do now with the experience I have is I ask like, hey, who's making a decision? Like, who's all in the decision-making process? Number one, because then I can start looking at, do I have someone connected to them on LinkedIn? Do I have people that I can call? One thing that's been pretty cool for me, actually, I'm gonna save that for the next one. But there's a lot of people in the decision-making process, and you need to know that, like, have hope. So whenever you're in the building, you're on site, you never know who you meet. That impression you make is on a person that has a decision. And so just know that, like, just because you see a position online or you see somebody post, hey, I'm hiring, come work with me. That person may not be the singular person to hire that. The only way I've seen that happen is in college football, because I've worked for college football coaches, head coaches, and they literally interviewed me. So I got hired by college football coaches. Now in the professional ranks, it's a little different. Well, it's a lot different. And so you have to go through that process. Like I said, like I did with the director role, and then with the assistant director, it was a little different. But most of that has to deal with the different processes that they have. Number two, I learned about myself. And once again, this may shock you, and this kind of honestly shocked me, was I need to network more. Like, I need to network more. And for me, as I'm preparing for the Player Development Summit, which we'll talk about later, as I create this content, as I write my third book, it's already written, it's coming out, y'all will learn about it. As I do the newsletters, everything that you all consume, because I want to help you all, I have opportunity to meet a lot of people, but I haven't networked with people. I haven't built relationships with people who are in different spaces. And it's crazy for me to say that. Well, I don't want to say I haven't. That's false. I have. But I need to build more. I need to build more relationships internationally. Who's doing this internationally? Who's doing this here at this level or in this sport or at this college or this, Division II, Division III. And so for me, I have to come up with a plan of networking. And I realized I need to network and continue to make connections with a lot more people. Another thing I learned, this was really, really good. There are a lot of people in my corner. And if you're one of those people, I appreciate you. Because what happened was, in this 4 years, what's happened is I have learned that a lot of people love the logo. And that's fine. I'm not faulting anyone, but a lot of people love the logo. So when I was done at Baylor, there were a lot of people who were, hey man, you're the guy, blah, blah, blah. And they were gone, right? because the logo does things for people. I get it, right? There's a reason why name brand costs more than non-name brand. Shout out to all my Costcoers, Kirkland Signature. We be holding it down for Kirkland Signature, but I get it, right? And so, but what I found out through this process, there's a lot of people who are in my corner. Like for this director role, I text someone who was in that space at a high level, senior executive at the league level. And I texted and said, hey, can you give me an interview? They were like, absolutely. They was like, send me your resume. I sent them my resume. They sent my resume to the head coach and the general manager. And it was just like, whoa, that's incredible. Like, you know, and for that person just to do that. And this person, we've had interactions and we know each other, but this person knows me through people. This person knows me through things like this, that I share and care for people. I was able to call some of my former head coaches I work with. Hey, do you mind if I put you down as reference? Absolutely, man. Hope you get it, right? There's people that I go to, like people I know in my personal life that were like, hey, I know so-and-so, like you got this. One crazy story is like my wife has a friend and she was just talking to her friend and her friend ended up knowing somebody in ownership at one of these places. And so that was a connection as well. So there's a lot of people standing in my corner. And I bring this up because, and also, yeah, for the assistant director position, the person who was director, that person was standing up for me in my corner because somebody else who's in a role at another organization was like, hey, you got an opening. He's the guy for it. He's the guy for it. And so that meant a lot to me. And so what I bring this up because a lot of you, well, not a lot of you, I know when I was young, people would say, hey man, just keep doing what you're doing. Stay in your lane. People notice what you're doing. But people do. I have people standing up for me in the corner because of this, because of me sharing this with you, me helping you or whoever's listening, or 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when somebody's worried about player development or wants to talk about professional interviews, that I'm creating content to help people. And so thankfully, you know, as my parents told me, always treat people right. I've been able to help a lot of you all get jobs. A lot of you all experience things. A lot of you all understand what player development is. Maybe you're a coach has been able to enhance your program. But having a lot of people for me in my corner, that was incredible. That was something I needed to see, honestly, because like I said, in that transition in the last 4 years, it felt like a lot of people weren't in my corner. But going through this process, I learned that there are a lot of people in my corner, and I cannot thank those people and you all watching this who are in my corner as well. And then the last thing is interviewing that I learned is interviewing has positives. So I tell people all the time, when you get a chance to interview in person or at a facility and they fly you out, whatever, or flew you out, as some of y'all flew you out, there's positives. You know, when you talk to more people, it's positive because people get to know you. They get to know what you do, how you do it, and what you've done. You never know what sports executive is going to another team, another organization, another league, another country, whatever it may be, another sector, right? And so you're able to say, or they're able to go back to, hey, you're interviewing, man, this has positive. One of the stories I love about the positives of interview is Justice Jones. And I'm gonna share this story because we're gonna talk about this at some point when I'm gonna have him on as a guest, his second time talking on Player Development Pod. You can catch his first time up here in the cloud. But basically, he interviewed at another NFL organization. He did not get the job at the organization. Well, when the New York Jets made their changes in the front office, someone from that other organization went to the Jets. The Jets were looking for someone in player development as someone was retiring. And this person said, hey, there's this guy we interviewed at the last place I was at. He did a great job, crushed his interview. Let's bring him in the interview. So he was brought in the interview, went through the process and got the job. So interviewing has positives. Even if you don't get the job, I understand it. Y'all, I have been on so many interviews in 4 years. So many. It can get deflating. It can take you down, but it has positives. Trust me, you get to learn different things. There's things I learned about this director role, about structures, and what would I do if I literally can hire and build out the entire thing and hire someone? What would I look for in someone to hire? You know, has that changed from when I was in college football? Now this is professional, now this is different. So interviewing has positives. Now, the last thing here, and also please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. If you're enjoying this video, please like it, subscribe to this channel. I just love sharing information. I love the educational aspect of this, and I hope you're learning. The last one here is, where do I go from here? You may say, all right, so you talked about how it went, what you learned, where do you go from here? Well, the number one thing is, hey, I'm gonna keep pushing, but I gotta get ready for the Player Development Summit. The 2025 Player Development Summit will be here in Kansas City. I want you to click the link in the show notes so you can get all the information you need about the 2025 Player Development Summit. But seriously, we're less than 60 days away. And so that interview process did kind of take up a lot of my headspace and some of my stuff that I wanted to do for the summit. And so content wise or whatever, because I had to prepare for two professional interviews at the same time. And so now that those are out of the way, we just have to prepare for the summit. And so I'm excited to prepare for the summit, and I hope to see you there. Here's a video up here about why you can't miss the 2025 Player Development Summit. The other thing I'm gonna be working on, or the next place, where do I go, is to sharpen my skills in my communication, my resume. How can my resume be better? How can my resume sit on the desk and someone grab and say, whoa, like, wow, that's really good. How can I communicate what I can do in a role better? How can I communicate better in person? Once again, I like learning, y'all. The biggest room in the house is room for improvement. So I always want to improve. And so I'm looking at, hey, all right, what can I do in my communication when I'm saying this? Like, when I communicate what I want to do, is it too college football-y? Is it too, not necessarily am I stuck in what I've done, but does it sound like I'm able to learn? Am I communicating the forever learner aspect that I know in my heart that I am? Am I communicating that I am the only person who can do this job? Now, once again, with those two opportunities, I feel like I did. But how can I get better in communication? How can I make this more concise? How can I get straight to the point? How can I answer the question directly? Different things like that, right? Like, I'm sharpening my tools. And then where do I go from here, y'all? One thing I've learned in life is you gotta celebrate, right? I think back to the 7-year-old Ed who fell in love with sports, who knew, I wanna work in sports, right? I wanna work in sports. This is like what I wanna do. 7-year-old Ed would have loved to have 2 professional interviews overall, but 2 at the same time. And so what I've done is, whenever I finish an interview, I take a deep breath. I think about everything that was asked. I try and get everything down back on a sheet of paper, whatever it may be. Call my wife, hey, this is how it went. And then I go celebrate. Right? Because I had the opportunity to interview. Now, this is how I celebrate. I'm gonna celebrate on the screen with you all here. Got some Olipop right there, my favorite flavor, which is root beer. Olipop, if you're watching this or anybody knows somebody at Olipop, hey, let's partner. We need all these at the 2025 Player Development Summit. You know what I'm saying? You feel me? But, hey, I go, give me something, celebrate, right? It's been a lot, right? Some of you all interviewing, it's a lot. It's a lot to prepare for an interview. It's a lot to hear no. It's a lot to continue to show up. So you want to celebrate. It's a lot to get someone to say, hey, we want to bring you in because we think you can do this. And so you got to celebrate, small celebrations. And so I'm going to pop this. Give me a little bit of this Olipop. Here we go. Oh, hey, and as I always say, go out, create generational impact. Don't wait, create that generational impact today. I hope that blessed you all. And if you're in the interview process, keep going. Hey, you can learn a lot. And hey, don't let a no knock you down. Let's go, Olipop. Let me do this how they do it in the commercials. No, I'm about to drop it. Y'all have a good one. I'll see y'all. Olipop.